Sit back, relax, and welcome to Reading Hours. Today's book is The Hedge Knight by George R.R. Martin. Please let us know in the comments from where you are watching, or if there is a book you want us to summarize in future. The Hedge Knight is a novella set in the world of A Song of Ice and Fire, George R. R. Martin's renowned epic fantasy series. First published in 1998, it serves as the prologue to the Tales of Dunk and Egg series, which chronicles the adventures of Ser Duncan the Tall, known simply as Dunk, and his squire, Egg, who later becomes King Aegon V. Targaryen. The story takes place decades before the events of A Game of Thrones and provides a fascinating glimpse into the politics, history, and chivalric ideals of Westeros. The novella introduces readers to Dunk, a wandering hedge knight of humble origins, and his journey to participate in a grand tournament. Amidst the knights and lords of Westeros, Dunk's outsider status as a common-born knight is juxtaposed with the intrigues, politics, and dangerous ambitions of the noble houses. Themes of honor, loyalty, and ambition run deep throughout the story, which combines elements of classic medieval adventure with Martin's signature complexity and moral ambiguity. In addition to its captivating plot, The Hedge Knight delves into the nature of knighthood and the stark differences between the ideals of chivalry and the grim realities of life in Westeros. Through Dunk's journey, Martin explores the concept of heroism and what it truly means to be a knight in a world rife with corruption, power struggles, and shifting allegiances. As we move through the novella, we will follow Dunk's personal growth, the challenges he faces, and the relationships he forms, setting the stage for the deeper connections and tragedies that unfold in future installments of Tales of Dunk and Egg. Now, let's dive into the tale of Dunk and his quest for honor, glory, and self-discovery. In the heart of Westeros, where the winds of fate blow through the tumultuous landscape of knighthood and politics, a lone figure stands tall amidst the rustling leaves of an ancient forest. Ser Duncan the Tall, or Dunk, as he is simply known, is a hedge knight, one of the lower ranks of the chivalric order. With no noble blood to his name, Dunk is an anomaly in a world where birthright often determines the future. His only weapons are his size, strength, and an unshakable sense of honor, which he clings to despite the realities of the world around him. The story begins with Dunk's arrival at the small town of White Walls, where a grand tournament is being held. A series of banners flutter in the wind, each representing the great houses of Westeros, and the air is filled with the sounds of knights preparing for the joust. Dunk, ever the idealist, sees this tournament as an opportunity to prove his worth, not only as a warrior, but as a true knight. It is here, amidst the noble houses and the gilded tents, that Dunk's journey takes its first step into the complex, ever-shifting world of Westeros. Dunk's arrival at White Walls is met with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. As a hedge knight, he has no titles, no connections, and no powerful house backing him. He is a wanderer, a man of humble origins who has earned his spurs through years of hard work and combat. But this does not dissuade Dunk from his mission. He is determined to make a name for himself, to earn a place in the annals of history, and to prove that true knightly values, honor, loyalty, and courage, still hold sway in a world that often values power above all else. His squire, a boy named Egg, accompanies him on this journey, Egg's true identity is shrouded in mystery. Egg, who is younger and smaller than Dunk, is devoted to his master, but his origins remain a secret. Despite his unassuming appearance, Egg will play a pivotal role in Dunk's future, though Dunk remains unaware of the significance of their bond in the grander scheme of things. For now, Egg's role is simply to assist Dunk in his daily chores, and their camaraderie gives a sense of warmth to Dunk's otherwise solitary existence. As Dunk sets up camp outside the tournament grounds, he begins to understand the stark difference between his life as a Hedge Knight and the opulence of the noble houses. The knights around him are of noble birth, their armor gleaming and their horses finely bred. They wear their status like a second skin, their actions dictated by the expectations of their birthright. Dunk, on the other hand, has no such luxuries. He is a knight in name alone, with no lands, no wealth, and no political power. His only claim to knighthood is his sword and his unwavering sense of honor. In this world, such ideals are often mocked, and Dunk's earnestness is seen as a quaint anachronism by many. However, Dunk's size and strength are undeniable. He is a towering figure, a man whose prowess in combat is matched only by his sense of fairness. He has a natural gift for fighting, and though his equipment is often of poor quality, his skill with a sword is beyond question. Dunk's combat style is straightforward. He relies on his brute strength and simple tactics rather than the intricate maneuvers that many of the noble knights use. Yet, this simplicity proves to be his strength, as his opponents underestimate him at their peril. As Dunk navigates the tournament grounds, he encounters several key figures who will shape his journey. Among them is Sir Maynard Plum, a knight of some renown, who offers Dunk a chance to prove himself in the joust. The joust, however, is not merely a contest of skill. It is a display of power and influence. The noble houses use the tournament as a means to assert their dominance over one another, and the stakes are higher than Dunk initially realizes. It is in this environment that Dunk's sense of honor will be tested, and he will be forced to confront the harsh realities of the world he seeks to belong to. Despite Dunk's lack of noble birth, his straightforward approach to combat and his unwavering commitment to doing what is right soon earn him the respect of some of the other knights. Yet, not all are so willing to accept him. Sir Maynard's condescending attitude toward Dunk underscores the tension between the common-born and the noble-born knights. Dunk's status as a Hedge Knight means he is looked down upon, his every move scrutinized and judged by those who view him as little more than a curiosity. Through Dunk's interactions with these knights, Martin explores the themes of honor, class, and the nature of chivalry. Dunk is a knight in every sense of the word, yet he lacks the privilege of noble blood that would grant him respect. His journey is not just one of personal growth, but also a commentary on the rigid social structure of Westeros, where power and status are often determined by birth rather than merit. As Dunk prepares for his first tournament bout, the tension builds. The crowd gathers, eager to see which knights will rise to the challenge and which will falter. Dunk stands at the edge of the arena, his heart pounding, ready to face whatever comes his way. It is here in the joust that Dunk will begin to realize that knighthood is not just about glory or honor, it is also about survival. In the world of Westeros, the line between victory and defeat is razor thin, and every action carries consequences. Dunk may have the heart of a true knight, but but the harsh realities of the world around him will soon test his resolve in ways he cannot yet imagine. As the first tilt of the joust begins, the story of Dunk and Egg truly begins to unfold. With every passing moment, Dunk will come to understand that being a knight is far more complicated than he ever believed, and that the true test of his character lies not in his ability to fight, but in his ability to navigate the treacherous waters of Westerosi politics and honor. As the tournament commences, the tension in the air is palpable. The excitement of the crowd, the clashing of lances, and the thrill of the joust create an atmosphere unlike anything Dunk has ever experienced. The sight of noble knights mounted on powerful steeds, wearing gleaming armor, and prepared to engage in the brutal sport is both awe-inspiring and daunting. Dunk, with his rough-hewn armor and lack of proper equipment, feels out of place among the glittering knights of high birth. Yet, despite his outsider status, Dunk is resolute. His focus is unwavering, and his sense of purpose is clear. He has come to prove that honor and valor are not limited to the nobility. His status as a common-born knight may set him apart, but it will not define his worth. Dunk's first joust takes place against a knight named Sir Maynard Plum, a man of some renown whose haughty attitude matches his noble heritage. Maynard's demeanor reflects the typical disdain that the highborn feel toward the common folk, especially those like Dunk who do not conform to the traditions of nobility. Dunk, however, is undeterred by Maynard's arrogance. His own sense of honor is his guiding principle, and he views the joust not as a mere contest of skill, but as a chance to demonstrate his core belief that knighthood should be about more than just birthright. It should be about the strength of one's character. The joust itself is a brutal and intense affair. As Dunk charges toward Maynard, the sound of the two lances splintering fills the air. Dunk's large frame, while an advantage in strength, presents challenges when it comes to maneuvering in the joust. He is not as nimble or graceful as many of the highborn knights, but his raw power and determination more than make up for his lack of finesse. Dunk's steed, though not as fine as the horses of his opponents, is sturdy and reliable, a reflection of Dunk's pragmatic approach to life. The joust ends in Dunk's favor, much to the surprise of those who had underestimated him. Maynard, though an experienced knight, is unseated, and Dunk's reputation grows with every victory. However, Dunk's triumph in the joust is not without its consequences. Though he is celebrated by some, he also earns the ire of others. In the world of Westeros, where power and honor are often intertwined, Dunk's unexpected success challenges the established order. Sir Maynard, humiliated by his defeat, takes to mocking Dunk, attempting to diminish his accomplishments. But Dunk, ever the idealist, does not let the scorn of the highborn knights deter him. His victory is not just about besting an opponent. It is about proving that true knighthood lies in one's deeds, not in one's ancestry. Amidst the turmoil of the jousting field, Dunk also becomes acquainted with several notable figures who will play significant roles in his journey. Among these is Sir Gorman Peake, a knight of great renown who serves as a reminder of the difference between true honor and the pretensions of the nobility. Peake is a man whose wealth and position have made him arrogant, and his actions reflect the moral decay that pervades the noble houses of Westeros. In Dunk, Peake sees an opportunity to further his own interests, though Dunk remains blissfully unaware of the darker motives at play. Peake's interactions with Dunk, though cordial on the surface, are laced with subtle manipulation, a reminder that in the world of Westeros, trust is a rare commodity, and every relationship has the potential to become a game of power. The tournament itself serves as a microcosm of the larger social and political landscape of Westeros, where the line between honor and deceit is often blurred. Dunk, though an outsider, begins to see the corruption that lurks beneath the surface of the chivalric order. The knights may wear the trappings of nobility, but their actions often betray a different set of values, one that prioritizes power, wealth, and influence over the virtues of courage, honor, and selflessness that Dunk holds dear. As Dunk continues to participate in the tournament, he also faces a growing sense of uncertainty. Though he has won several bouts, he begins to question whether his victories truly reflect the ideals he holds dear. The nobility's disdain for him, his status as a common-born knight, and the political maneuvering behind the scenes all serve as reminders that the world Dunk seeks to belong to is one of stark contrasts, where ideals often give way to pragmatism, and where honor can be twisted to serve the needs of the powerful. In this world, Dunk's commitment to fairness and justice may set him apart, but it may also place him in danger. At the heart of Dunk's internal struggle is his relationship with Egg, his young squire. Though Egg is quiet and reserved, there is more to him than Dunk initially realizes. Egg's loyalty to Dunk is unquestioned, and Dunk, in turn, is deeply protective of the boy. But as the tournament progresses, and Dunk's position becomes more precarious, their bond is tested. Dunk's sense of responsibility toward Egg grows, and he begins to feel that he must protect not only his own honor, but the future of his squire. The relationship between Dunk and Egg is one of mutual dependence, though it is one that neither of them fully understands yet. In the midst of this tension, Dunk begins to form alliances with a few of the other knights. Some are genuine, others more self-serving, but all of them recognize Dunk's unique qualities as a knight. His sense of honor, his strength, and his refusal to be swayed by the politics of the tournament earn him a measure of respect, but that respect comes at a cost. As Dunk's reputation grows, so too does the attention he attracts. And in the world of Westeros, attention can be both a blessing and a curse. The tournament culminates in a final joust that will determine the champion of the event. Dunk, despite his successes, faces one last challenge, this time not only from a skilled knight, but from the very system that seeks to control him. As the joust draws near, Dunk must decide whether he will continue to fight for the ideals of knighthood that he holds dear, or whether he will succumb to the harsh realities of the world around him. In the heat of battle, Dunk will be forced to confront not only his own limitations, but also the unspoken rules of a society that values power over virtue. The final joust approaches, and the air is thick with anticipation. The crowd's cheers and murmurs of excitement grow louder as the knights prepare for the event that will determine the tournament's champion. Dunk stands at the sidelines, trying to shake off the nerves that have begun to gnaw at him. His victory against Sir Maynard Plum had earned him the admiration of many. But now, facing a champion knight in the final, he realizes just how high the stakes have become. Though Dunk's confidence remains unshaken, there is a flicker of doubt within him. The tournament had started as a personal challenge, a way for him to prove his worth to himself. But now, it has grown into something larger, a moment where he can demonstrate the true meaning of knighthood. It is not about birth or titles, but about honor, courage, and the will to fight for what is right. His opponent is Sir Gorman Peak, a knight whose reputation precedes him. Sir Gorman's name is known throughout the Seven Kingdoms, not for his martial skill, but for his wealth and influence. Dunk has heard whispers about Peak's unscrupulous methods and his tendency to use his power to manipulate others. In many ways, Sir Gorman embodies the very things Dunk despises about the nobility. His actions reflect a man who values status above all else, who seeks to maintain his power at any cost. Dunk sees in Peak a symbol of the very system that seeks to suppress men like him. But at the same time, Dunk understands that to defeat Peak would not only be a personal victory, but a statement that honor and valor can triumph over the political maneuvering that dominates the world of Westeros. As the joust begins, Dunk is immediately struck by the stark contrast between himself and Sir Gorman Peak. Peak rides a magnificent horse, one that is a symbol of his wealth, and his armor gleams in the sunlight, a testament to his status. Dunk, on the other hand, feels his own armor growing heavier with each passing moment. His horse, though sturdy, is far from the sleek steeds of the highborn knights. But Dunk's determination burns brighter than ever. He has no illusions about his chances, but he knows that the heart of a knight lies in his willingness to fight, not just for glory or for honor, but for what is just. The first charge is brutal. Dunk rides towards Sir Gorman with all the force he can muster, his lance aimed directly at his opponent's chest. The clash is deafening. Dunk feels the impact, the force of the lances shattering against one another, and for a brief moment, everything goes black. When his vision clears, Dunk realizes that he has not been unseated, but neither has Sir Gorman. They are both still mounted, both still locked in the contest, each struggling to maintain control of their steed. The crowd erupts in a roar of approval, but Dunk knows that the joust is far from over. He has struck a blow, but it has not been a decisive one. If he is to win, he must summon all of his strength and skill. In the second pass, Dunk's lance connects with Sir Gorman's shoulder, but the blow is not enough to unseat him. Dunk feels the sting of his own failure, but he pushes through, determined to keep fighting. The joust is a test of endurance, and Dunk knows that it will take more than just physical strength to emerge victorious. It will take grit, determination, and the unshakable belief that what he is doing is right. He thinks of Egg, his young squire, who watches from the sidelines with wide eyes. Dunk's victories so far have not only been for his own honor, but also for the future of the boy who has chosen to follow him. As the joust continues, Dunk begins to realize that Sir Gorman Peak's skill is not what makes him dangerous. It is his ability to manipulate the situation, to use his wealth and influence to tip the scales in his favor. Dunk has seen this before in the political games played by the nobility, where power is more important than merit, and where the rules of combat are often bent to suit the needs of the powerful. In the world of Westeros, honor is not always enough. Dunk, however, refuses to compromise. He will fight with everything he has, even if it means going up against a knight who is more concerned with appearances than with the true meaning of knighthood. With each pass, Dunk's resolve hardens. He can feel the weight of the armor pressing down on him, the exhaustion beginning to take its toll. His arms ache, his vision is blurred, and yet he refuses to falter. This is not just a fight for victory, it is a fight for everything he believes in. He is fighting for the idea that knighthood should be about integrity, about about serving others, about living a life of honor regardless of one's birth. For Dunk, this is the essence of knighthood, and he will not allow it to be overshadowed by the games of the powerful. As the joust nears its conclusion, Dunk digs deep into his reserves of strength. His thoughts flicker to the road that has brought him here, from a common-born boy with little more than his strength, and his sword to a knight with a squire and a growing reputation. Dunk realizes that his journey is far from over, that the world is filled with challenges that will test him in ways he cannot yet imagine. But for now, the joust remains his focus. His heart beats in time with the rhythm of his horse's gallop, and the sound of his lance striking Sir Gorman Peak is like the ringing of a bell in his ears. It is the sound of destiny, the sound of justice being served, the sound of Dunk's unwavering commitment to the ideals he holds dear. In a final, climactic moment, Dunk's lance strikes true. He feels the satisfying jolt as his opponent is unseated, and for a moment, time seems to stand still. The crowd erupts into cheers, and Dunk, though exhausted and battered, stands victorious. The joust has been hard fought, but in the end, it is not just strength that has won the day, it is honor, and Dunk's unwavering commitment to the ideals of knighthood. As Dunk stands in the aftermath of the joust, his victory is met with mixed reactions. While many in the crowd cheer for his triumph, others look on with disdain. Dunk has proven himself in the eyes of some, but there are those who will never accept a common-born knight in their midst. And as Dunk looks over at Egg, his young squire, he knows that the journey ahead will be filled with more trials, more challenges, and more battles to fight, not just with swords, but with the very ideals that define what it means to be a knight. As the dust settles from the joust, Dunk finds himself both elated and exhausted. The cheers of the crowd still echo in his ears, but the triumph of victory feels distant. His body aches from the violent impact of the joust, and his mind races with the reality of what this victory truly means. For a fleeting moment, it feels as though the tournament has ended, and with it, any hope of a simple life for Dunk and Egg. But the aftermath of the event holds far more weight than he could have anticipated. As Dunk dismounts, the reality of his circumstances begins to set in. This victory is not just a fleeting moment of glory. It is the beginning of something more complicated, more dangerous, and far more political than he could have imagined. Sir Gorman Peak, the defeated knight, barely acknowledges Dunk's victory. His pride wounded, the arrogant knight rides off without so much as a word of congratulations or concession. Dunk, standing in the center of the field, watches the nobleman's retreating form and feels an odd mixture of vindication and unease. Though Dunk has won the joust, there is no true sense of personal satisfaction in it. His victory seems like a small thing compared to the larger forces at play in the Seven Kingdoms. Dunk's thoughts turn to Egg, his young squire, who stands nearby with a proud but worried expression on his face. Dunk's eyes soften when they meet Egg's gaze. The boy has proven to be a loyal companion and a promising squire, but Dunk knows that this victory will not shield them from the dangers that lie ahead. Egg approaches Dunk with a nervous smile, his hands clasped tightly around the reins of Dunk's horse. The boy looks at Dunk as if waiting for some kind of recognition, some sign that his efforts, too, have been worthwhile. Dunk, though weary, gives him a proud nod. Egg has been by his side through every trial, from the difficult moments on the road to the perilous jousts. Dunk can't help but feel a pang of guilt as he sees the uncertainty in Egg's eyes. The boy has put his trust in Dunk, and yet Dunk feels the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. The world they now find themselves in is not one that will forgive mistakes easily, and Dunk knows that Egg's journey is only just beginning. As they make their way back to their tent, Dunk's thoughts return to the prize for the tournament, a purse of gold, as well as the possibility of securing a place among the nobility. Dunk knows that the gold will provide for them for some time, but it's the political ramifications that trouble him. Winning the joust has drawn attention to him, and with attention comes the inevitable complications. While Dunk has never cared much for the politics of the realm, he cannot ignore the reality that his victory has made him a target for those who care only for power. Dunk may have defeated Sir Gorman Peak, but that does not mean the battles are over. In many ways, they have only just begun. Egg, sensing Dunk's unease, asks if they will be leaving the tournament ground soon. Dunk hesitates for a moment, then nods. They have won the tournament, and now it is time to move on. But Dunk is no fool. He knows that staying on the tournament grounds any longer will only invite trouble. Sir Gorman Peak may have been humiliated, but there are still other knights, other players in the game of power, who will see Dunk's victory as an opportunity to challenge him. Dunk must navigate the political landscape carefully, for he now finds himself in a world that is far more dangerous than the one he came from. As Dunk and Egg prepare to leave the tournament grounds, Dunk's mind turns to the future. He is a knight now, but what does that really mean? The title of knight has always been associated with glory, honor, and duty, but Dunk knows that the true meaning of knighthood is far more complex. He is not one of the highborn knights who carry the weight of their family name and wealth. He is a hedge knight, one of the common men who have earned their title through deeds rather than birth. Dunk wears his armor proudly, but the reality is that he is still an outsider, still someone who must prove himself time and time again. Egg's voice pulls Dunk from his thoughts as the boy excitedly talks about their next destination. Dunk listens attentively, but his mind is elsewhere. The road ahead is long, and Dunk knows that their journey will take them into lands that are unfamiliar and fraught with danger. They have seen little of the true nature of the world, and Dunk fears that what lies ahead will test their resolve in ways they are not prepared for. But one thing is certain: Dunk will protect Egg at all costs, even if it means fighting for his life. As they mount their horses and begin their journey, Dunk reflects on the meaning of victory. To the highborn knights, a joust is merely a contest of strength and skill. But for Dunk, the victory is symbolic of something greater, the triumph of the common man against the entrenched powers of the nobility. Dunk's life is no longer just about surviving from one day to the next. It is about more than just honor or wealth. It is about protecting the weak, standing up for what is right, and proving that even the lowliest knight can have an impact on the world. As they ride through the countryside, Dunk cannot help but feel the weight of the road ahead. The journey is just beginning, and Dunk knows that the battles he faces will not be won by strength alone. They will be won by wisdom, by the ability to navigate the treacherous currents of politics and power, and by the conviction to stand firm in the face of adversity. Dunk and Egg's story is far from over, and the challenges they will face will only grow more complex and dangerous. With the tournament behind them, Dunk's thoughts begin to turn to the next phase of their journey. He knows that the prize money will provide for them, but there is no guarantee that their path will be smooth. The world of Westeros is unpredictable, and Dunk and Egg must be prepared for whatever lies ahead. Their adventure is only beginning, and Dunk, ever the optimist, can't help but feel a spark of excitement for the unknown challenges they will face. With each passing day, Dunk and Egg grow closer, learning more about each other and the world around them. Dunk's journey is no longer just about being a knight. It is about understanding the deeper responsibilities that come with the title and learning how to navigate the complex web of loyalty, honor, and justice in a world that often seems stacked against those who are not born into power. The road ahead will be long, but Dunk knows one thing for certain: he is ready for whatever comes next. Dunk and Egg continue their journey, leaving behind the excitement of the tournament and heading into the unknown. The road is long, and as they ride through the countryside, Dunk can't help but reflect on the nature of their travels. They have left the bustling city of Ashford behind, where the tournament was held, and now find themselves on a quieter, more desolate path. The contrast is stark, and Dunk feels the weight of it settling over him. His life has been one of constant movement, of never staying in one place long enough to feel truly at home. But with Egg at his side, Dunk feels a sense of purpose that he hasn't known before. Egg, ever curious, is full of questions as they ride. The young squire's mind races with the possibilities of what they might find as they venture further into the kingdom. Dunk, however, is quieter, his thoughts consumed by the complexities of their situation. While he had hoped that winning the joust would offer them some stability, it has only led to greater uncertainty. The eyes of the powerful are now on him, and the political ramifications of his victory have yet to fully unfold. Dunk has long been accustomed to living in the shadows, unnoticed and out of reach. But now, with the glint of gold and the title of knight to his name, he is no longer invisible. He knows that it's only a matter of time before someone comes calling, and he must be prepared for the challenges that await. As they make their way through the countryside, Dunk begins to notice the subtle signs of unrest in the air. It's not immediately obvious, but there's an underlying tension in the villages they pass through. The people are polite, but their eyes are wary. Dunk's simple knightly appearance, clad in dented armor, the symbols of his humble origins, draws some stares, but there's no overt hostility. Still, Dunk can sense that something is wrong. His instincts tell him that there's more to this tension than meets the eye. Egg, who is more attuned to the social dynamics of their world, picks up on these signs as well. He's quieter than usual, his curiosity tempered by a growing sense of caution. Egg has always been sharp, and Dunk appreciates his insight, though he often tries to shield the boy from the darker realities of their world. The journey they are on will be full of hardships, and Dunk wants to protect Egg from the dangers that come with knowing too much, too soon. But he knows that Egg must learn the ways of the world, as harsh and unforgiving as they may be. Their travels lead them to a small village nestled at the foot of a mountain range. It's a place that seems to have been forgotten by time, with little more than a handful of cottages and a small tavern to its name. Dunk and Egg make their way to the tavern, hoping to find some rest and information before continuing on. As they enter, the warm, musty air of the tavern greets them, and Dunk's eyes scan the room, noting the few patrons who sit nursing their drinks. They seem ordinary enough, but Dunk senses the same unease here that he felt in the villages they passed through. The innkeeper, a stout man with a permanent frown on his face, greets them with a curt nod. Dunk orders a simple meal and sits down at a nearby table, his eyes scanning the room as he waits. Egg, ever the optimist, tries to strike up a conversation with the innkeeper, but the man remains short and unwelcoming. It's clear that there is something troubling him, but Dunk doesn't press the issue. He knows that pushing too hard could invite suspicion. Instead, he decides to observe, to wait until the right moment to make his move. After a time, the innkeeper reluctantly offers them some information. There have been rumors of unrest in the region, of tensions between the local lords and the small folk. Dunk listens carefully, picking up on the subtle hints in the innkeeper's words. The nobles, it seems, have grown more demanding, and the common people are starting to resist. Dunk can see that the unrest is more than just a passing issue. It's a symptom of a deeper problem, one that may not be easily resolved. The people of this land are beginning to realize that their lives are controlled by the whims of the powerful, and they are no longer content to sit idly by. Dunk's thoughts turn inward as he listens. He has seen this kind of unrest before: small revolts, brief moments of rebellion, often crushed by the weight of the nobility. It's the way of the world, a cycle that has existed for as long as anyone can remember. The powerful will always dominate, and the weak will always be left to suffer. But Dunk, despite his humble beginnings, refuses to accept that reality. He has seen firsthand the cruelty of the noble houses and the indifference with which they treat the lives of the common folk. As the evening wears on, Dunk begins to feel a growing sense of urgency. They can't stay in this village forever. They have no business here, and the longer they remain, the more likely it is that they'll become involved in something far larger than they can handle. Dunk knows that they must leave before they are caught up in the turmoil that is brewing in the region. But as they prepare to depart, something unexpected happens. A figure enters the tavern, a man with a sharp look in his eyes and a swagger in his step. He's dressed in fine armor, his cloak bearing the sigil of a powerful house. Dunk's instincts immediately go on alert. This man is no ordinary traveler. He is a knight, and one with the authority to make life difficult for those he crosses. The man's gaze sweeps over the room before landing on Dunk. For a moment, they lock eyes, and Dunk can sense the challenge in the man's stare. It's clear that this knight has taken note of Dunk's presence, and Dunk knows that it's only a matter of time before they cross paths. Egg, sensing the tension, quietly leans in and whispers to Dunk. Dunk nods, his mind already calculating the best course of action. The knight is not someone to be trifled with, but Dunk is no stranger to conflict. He has faced opponents far more dangerous than this man, and he will not be intimidated. The knight draws on, and Dunk feels the weight of the moment pressing down on him. He knows that the journey ahead will be fraught with danger. The unrest in the villages is only the beginning of the larger struggle that is taking place across the realm. Dunk and Egg are caught in the middle of a world that is teetering on the brink of chaos. The road ahead is uncertain, but Dunk has made a silent promise to himself. He will protect Egg at all costs, even if it means risking everything he has. As the knight makes his way toward Dunk's table, Dunk steels himself for what is to come. This is a world of power and politics, of knights and lords, of blood and honor. And Dunk, the Hedge Knight, is about to learn just how deep the game truly goes. Dunk feels the weight of the knight's gaze as the man approaches, his boots clacking against the wooden floor of the tavern. The air grows heavy, filled with unspoken tension. Dunk can sense that the knight's presence is more than just a passing encounter. This is a moment that will change the course of their journey. He remains calm, but his instincts tell him that something is about to happen. Egg, sitting across from him, is quiet, his youthful curiosity tempered by the growing unease in the room. The knight, tall and imposing, stops just in front of Dunk's table. His armor gleams in the flickering light of the tavern's fire, and his eyes are sharp, calculating. Dunk's hand instinctively drifts to the hilt of his sword, but he keeps it at his side. He has learned that it is often best to let words be the first weapon in such encounters. The knight looks him over with a slow, almost deliberate gaze, taking in Dunk's simple, worn armor, the unadorned shield, and the humble bearing that marks him as a Hedge Knight. "You're far from the tournaments, knight," the man says, his voice low and steady, but with a trace of something dark behind it. Dunk meets his gaze, refusing to let the man's words unsettle him. "I've traveled a long way," Dunk replies, his voice calm but firm. "I'm no knight by birth, just one who does what he can." The knight's lips curl into a slight, almost mocking smile. "A Hedge Knight, then? How quaint." His tone is dismissive, but Dunk doesn't flinch. He's used to being looked down upon by those who wear fine armor and carry titles. The man's judgment doesn't bother him, but it serves as a reminder of the divide that separates the nobility from the common folk. Dunk and Egg are the latter, and the knight is very much the former. "I didn't ask for your judgment, my lord," Dunk says, his words a quiet challenge. He has learned over the years that the best way to deal with men like this is to show that he's not afraid, that he won't be cowed by their superiority. "I'm just a man trying to make his way." The knight studies him for a moment, his eyes narrowing as if weighing Dunk's words. Then, without another word, he pulls out the chair opposite Dunk and sits down. Dunk feels the tension shift, but he remains still, his hand still resting on his sword. He knows that this conversation could go in any direction. The knight might challenge him to a duel, or worse, might use his position to make life difficult for both him and Egg. "I'm Ser Glendon Ball," the knight says, introducing himself with a casual air. "You may have heard of me." Dunk nods slowly, though the name doesn't immediately ring a bell. Ser Glendon Ball's demeanor is one of quiet arrogance, the kind that comes from knowing that he is someone of importance, even if Dunk doesn't recognize the name. "I'm Dunk." "Just Dunk," he replies, offering a simple, polite smile. Ser Glendon seems unperturbed by Dunk's lack of recognition. "It's rare to see a man like you wandering the roads," he says, studying Dunk carefully. "Most Hedge Knights stick to the cities where they can fight for gold or glory. But you're different. What brings you here?" Dunk hesitates, choosing his words carefully. He doesn't want to give away too much, not to a man who may be more dangerous than he seems. "I'm just passing through, not much else to say." Ser Glendon leans back in his chair, his eyes never leaving Dunk's face. "You're lying," he says flatly, his voice taking on a sharper edge. "I know a man like you is never just passing through. You've got something to prove, don't you?" Dunk doesn't respond immediately. Instead, he takes a deep breath, weighing his options. He could continue to deflect, to avoid giving Ser Glendon any insight into his true intentions. But but something in the knight's tone suggests that he already knows more than Dunk would like. The power dynamic in this conversation is shifting, and Dunk realizes that he may have no choice but to reveal more than he's comfortable with. "I won a joust," Dunk admits, his voice steady. "I won the tournament at Ashford, and now I'm trying to find my place in the world." Sir Glendon's eyes gleam with interest at the mention of the tournament. "Ah, I see," he says slowly, as if piecing together a puzzle. "You're the Hedge Knight who defeated the noblemen in the joust, the one who made a name for himself." Dunk bristles at the reminder of how quickly his life has changed. In the span of a few days, he went from being a nameless, wandering knight to someone with a reputation, someone who is now being watched by the powerful. "That's me," he replies, his voice tinged with a hint of bitterness. "But that name doesn't mean much. I'm still just trying to figure things out." Sir Glendon's smile widens, and there's something dangerous in it. "Don't be so modest," he says. "You've proven yourself to be a capable fighter. That's more than most men can say. And now, you're someone I'll be keeping an eye on." Dunk feels a knot tighten in his stomach. He can sense the underlying threat in Sir Glendon's words. The knight may be offering what seems like praise, but Dunk knows better than to take it at face value. He is being sized up, examined like a piece of meat on display. The idea that he might be a pawn in someone else's game is not lost on him. "I don't want any trouble," Dunk says, his voice low but firm. "I'm not looking for a fight. I'm just trying to get by." Sir Glendon leans forward, his tone suddenly cold. "Trouble follows men like you, Dunk. Men who think they can change the world by winning a tournament. But this is the real world. And in the real world, the only thing that matters is power. If you want to survive, you'll learn that lesson quickly." Dunk's heart races as he listens to the knight's words. He knows that this conversation is far from over. The power dynamics are shifting, and Dunk can't help but feel that he is standing at the precipice of something much larger than he anticipated. Sir Glendon's words hang in the air like a warning, and Dunk realizes that the path he's chosen, the road he's set upon, is not one he can walk alone. The world of knights and lords is a dangerous one, and Dunk must learn quickly if he is to survive. Egg shifts in his seat, his youthful face pale, but Dunk puts a hand on his shoulder to steady him. He knows that the boy is watching, learning. Dunk can only hope that the lessons he's learning now will help them both in the days to come. As Sir Glendon rises from the table, Dunk feels a surge of resolve. He will not be intimidated. He will find his place in this world, no matter the cost. But the road ahead is uncertain, and the dangers are growing more real with every passing moment. Dunk knows that he must be prepared for whatever comes next. The air in the woods grew thick as Dunk and Egg moved deeper into the forest. The dense canopy above shielded them from the harsh midday sun, creating pockets of shadow where the light struggled to reach. The scent of damp earth and crushed leaves filled the air, a familiar smell to Dunk, who had spent many nights camped beneath the stars on roads like these. But today felt different. There was an uneasy tension between them, an unspoken weight that had followed them since their encounter with Sir Glendon Ball at the tavern. The knight's words had been like an echo in Dunk's mind, repeating over and over again, "The only thing that matters is power." Dunk shook the thought from his head. He couldn't afford to dwell on such things, not while they were on the move. But he couldn't ignore the underlying truth in those words. His victory at Ashford had made him a target. and it seemed that Sir Glendon wasn't the only one who was taking notice. Every step they took felt like it brought them closer to something they couldn't yet see. Egg walked beside him, his small steps matching Dunk's long strides. The boy was silent, his face contemplative, eyes darting from tree to tree. He was always curious, asking questions and studying the world around him. But lately, Dunk had noticed that the boy's enthusiasm had waned. The weight of the world was starting to press down on him, just as it had begun to press down on Dunk. He wondered how long it would be before Egg, too, understood the harsh truths of this world. "Do you think we'll find what we're looking for?" Egg asked suddenly, breaking the silence. His voice was soft, but there was an underlying seriousness in it. It was the kind of question that felt more like a plea than a curiosity. Dunk didn't answer right away. The boy's question was one Dunk had asked himself many times. What were they looking for? A place to belong, a purpose, a chance to prove themselves. Dunk had been on the road for so long that sometimes the answers seemed to blur, like the horizon on a foggy day. All he knew was that he couldn't stop now. He had made promises to himself and to Egg, and he wasn't ready to give up on those. "We'll find it," Dunk said finally, his voice resolute. "Whatever it is, we'll keep moving forward and the road will lead us where we need to go." Egg nodded, but there was something in his eyes that Dunk couldn't quite place, an uncertainty, a fear. Dunk had seen it before in the eyes of men who had faced more battles than they cared to remember. But Egg was still a child, and Dunk wasn't sure how much of that fear was born of the world they were now traveling through. The woods began to thin as they reached the edge of a clearing. Dunk stopped and looked around, his instincts prickling. There was something about this place that didn't sit right with him. The trees here were spaced further apart, and the grass beneath their feet was too green, too lush, as if something unnatural had touched this place. Dunk's hand went to his sword, but he didn't unsheath it. He wasn't sure what he was sensing, but he had learned over the years to trust his gut. Egg shifted uneasily beside him. "What's wrong, Dunk?" "I don't know," Dunk replied quietly, his eyes scanning the clearing. "But something feels off. Stay close." They continued to move forward, cautiously, the silence of the forest now broken only by the rustling of their feet in the grass. Dunk's senses were alert, his mind whirling through possible scenarios. They could be walking into an ambush, or perhaps this was simply a stretch of wilderness that felt more menacing than it truly was. But the air was too still, the sounds of the forest too muted. Suddenly, the quiet was shattered by a movement from the trees to their left. Dunk's hand shot to his sword hilt, but he didn't draw it just yet. A figure emerged from the woods, a man, tall and broad-shouldered, with a rough, scruffy face and a cloak that hung loosely around his frame. He was armed, though his sword wasn't drawn. Dunk tensed, but he kept his hand on the hilt without drawing it. "Who are you?" Dunk called out, his voice firm but not hostile. It was a simple question, but one that carried weight in a world where everyone seemed to have an agenda. The man paused, his eyes flicking between Dunk and Egg, sizing them up. "I could ask you the same thing," he said, his voice rough and gravelly. "But I think it's clear we're both looking for something. Maybe we can help each other." Dunk didn't lower his guard. There was something about the way the man spoke that made him wary, as if he had an agenda of his own, though it was unclear what that might be. "We're not looking for trouble," Dunk said carefully. "Just passing through." The man chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "Passing through? You're in my neck of the woods now." And in these parts, nobody passes through without a reason. He took a step closer, his eyes narrowing. So, what's your business? Dunk felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. Just traveling. We're not here to cause any trouble. The man seemed to consider this for a long moment, and then his gaze softened slightly. I'm not here to fight you, friend, but these woods are dangerous. Not many make it through without a little help. Dunk studied the man, trying to gauge his sincerity. He could sense that the stranger was telling the truth, but Dunk had also learned that truth in this world could be a dangerous thing, especially when it came from strangers with unknown motives. Help, Dunk repeated cautiously. The man nodded. I've seen your type before, travelers, lost men with no direction. If you're smart, you'll listen to me and follow my lead. There are things in these woods that you won't be able to handle alone. Dunk exchanged a glance with Egg, who looked uncertain but didn't say anything. Dunk knew that they couldn't just turn back now. They had to keep moving forward. But this encounter felt like a crossroads, one that would determine the course of their journey. Dunk wasn't sure whether this man was a friend or foe, but he knew they had no choice but to hear him out. Lead the way, Dunk said, his voice steady. But don't think I'll be taking your word for it just yet. The man's eyes gleamed, and he stepped forward, motioning for them to follow. Dunk's hand remained on his sword hilt as they moved deeper into the woods, unsure of what lay ahead, but knowing that whatever it was, it would change the course of their journey forever. As Dunk and Egg followed the stranger through the woods, the quiet seemed to grow even thicker. The trees were taller here, their gnarled roots spreading like veins through the earth. The light filtering through the branches had a greenish hue, casting eerie shadows that seemed to shift with every step. The air was heavy with the scent of moss and earth, and Dunk could feel the weight of the silence pressing down on them. The man led them deeper into the forest, never looking back as he moved with a quiet confidence that spoke of long familiarity with these woods. Dunk's hand never left the hilt of his sword, but he was careful not to make any sudden moves. The forest felt alive in a way that made him uneasy. It wasn't just the strange feeling of being watched, nor the oppressive silence. There was something about the land itself that felt wrong, as if it had been touched by something ancient and dark. Egg, walking beside him, seemed to feel the same unease. The boy's steps were light, almost hesitant, as if he was unsure whether to trust their guide. Dunk could see the conflict in Egg's eyes. The boy was torn between the curiosity that always drove him and the growing wariness of the strange man leading them. After what seemed like hours, the man finally stopped at the edge of a small clearing, where a stream ran through the center, its waters clear but moving quickly, cutting a jagged path through the rocks. The trees here were thinner, allowing more sunlight to penetrate the ground, but it still felt isolated, as if this was a place where the rest of the world couldn't touch. This is where I was heading, the man said, finally turning to face Dunk and Egg. His voice was low, but there was an edge to it now, something that suggested he had been leading them to this place for a reason. He glanced at them with a half smile, though it was more unsettling than reassuring. You might want to sit for a while. The woods around here are known for playing tricks on people. Dunk didn't like the sound of that. He glanced at Egg, who looked back at him with wide eyes, and Dunk could see that the boy was beginning to get nervous. We don't need to stay long, Dunk said, his voice steady, trying to mask the uncertainty he felt. We're just passing through. We'll be on our way as soon as we can. The man raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. Instead, he crouched down by the edge of the stream and began to wash his face with the cold water, his movements slow and deliberate. Dunk and Egg stood a few paces away, unsure of what to do. The man's presence was unsettling, and Dunk had the distinct feeling that they were being watched by something other than just the stranger. "Do you think we can trust him?" Egg asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Dunk didn't answer right away. He could feel the boy's eyes on him, waiting for reassurance, but Dunk didn't have the answers Egg wanted. He had no idea whether they could trust the man or not. All he knew was that they couldn't turn back now. They were too deep into the woods, and whatever lay ahead was just as uncertain as the road that had brought them here. "I don't know, Egg," Dunk said quietly, keeping his voice calm. "But we have to be careful. Trust is earned, not given." Egg nodded, his brow furrowing in thought. Dunk could see the wheels turning in the boy's mind, his internal conflict growing as the weight of their situation settled in. Dunk wished he had a better answer for Egg, but there was nothing simple about this world. Trust could be a weapon as easily as a shield, and it was always a risk. The man finished splashing his face with water and stood up, wiping his hands on his cloak. He seemed to notice Dunk's gaze, and for a moment, their eyes met. There was something there, something old and dangerous, that Dunk couldn't quite place. The man had seen many things, had lived through more than Dunk could imagine, and that made him both an asset and a threat. "You'll need more than just a sword to survive in these woods," the man said suddenly, his voice sharp, as if he had been reading Dunk's thoughts. "It's not just beasts you'll find here. There's worse than that. People. Men who'll use you to get what they want, then leave you for dead when they're done." Dunk frowned. "I've dealt with men like that before." The man looked at him with a half smile, but there was no humor in it. "And what makes you think you won't meet more of them? There are always more." He glanced over at Egg, who stood still and silent, his wide eyes studying the stranger carefully. "And boys like him too. Boys who are better off learning to be men in a world like this. That's how you survive. You learn the truth, even when it's ugly." Dunk stepped forward, his hand still resting on the sword hilt, though he didn't draw it. "What's your point?" The man took a slow breath and let it out. "My point is simple. Stay too long in these woods and you'll learn things you don't want to know. Secrets, promises broken, blood spilled. That's the price you pay for being here." Dunk's heart began to race. There was something in the man's words that struck too close to home. He had learned about power and deceit in the last year more than he ever wanted to, but the warning still felt unsettling. "And if we leave?" Dunk asked, the question hanging in the air. "Then you may leave," the man said, his tone far more cryptic than Dunk liked. "But know this, you're already marked. The world doesn't forget people like you. You'll find your way to the end of your journey eventually, but it'll be harder than you think. And there'll be more waiting." Dunk didn't know what to make of this. Was this man simply trying to scare them? Or was there more truth to his words than Dunk was willing to admit? He had spent too many years walking the roads alone, trusting no one, to fall for a simple threat. But there was something in the stranger's eyes that made Dunk question whether he had truly seen the worst of the world yet. Maybe he hadn't. Maybe this world was far darker than Dunk had ever realized. As the man turned to walk away, Dunk motioned for Egg to follow. They needed to get moving, to continue down whatever path fate had laid out for them. But Dunk couldn't shake the feeling that this meeting, this moment in the woods, would come back to haunt them sooner rather than later. The The journey through the dense woods continued, and with each passing hour, Dunk felt the weight of the land pressing against him. The tension between him and the stranger was palpable, even though the man never said much after their brief conversation by the stream. Dunk couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, that they were being led into something far more dangerous than he could have imagined. Egg, still quiet and observant, kept close to Dunk's side, his youthful curiosity now tinged with unease. The stranger, whose name still hadn't been revealed, led them down narrow paths that seemed to twist and shift unnaturally, as if the forest itself was a living, breathing entity, guiding them in its own cryptic manner. Dunk had learned enough of the world to know that people often use the land as a weapon, whether through trickery, subterfuge, or simply making one feel lost. But this felt different. The forest felt alive, like it had its own will, and it wasn't entirely clear whether Dunk and Egg were supposed to be part of it. The man stopped abruptly, his hand raised in a signal for silence. Dunk immediately stiffened, his senses going on high alert. There was no sound, nothing to betray what had caused the stranger's sudden pause, but Dunk trusted his instincts. Something was off. He reached for his sword, ready to draw it at a moment's notice, though his grip remained light for now. Egg, standing just behind him, mimicked his movements, his hand resting near the dagger he had inherited from Dunk. The boy, despite his youth, was learning quickly. The world wasn't kind, and every day was a lesson in survival. But Dunk wished that Egg didn't have to learn these lessons so soon, and certainly not in a place like this. "What's wrong?" Dunk asked in a low voice, though he already had a sinking feeling in his gut. The man, still facing forward, didn't answer immediately. He simply stood there, his back straight, his expression unreadable. Dunk's eyes flicked from the man to the woods around them, trying to pick up any hint of movement or sound. But everything remained eerily still. Then, just as suddenly as he had stopped, the man began to move again. Only this time his steps were slower, more deliberate, as if he were avoiding something or someone. Dunk exchanged a glance with Egg, his concern deepening. They had been led into this tangled mess, but Dunk had always believed that there was a way out, that he could get them through any challenge with enough time and determination. But this felt different. It wasn't a simple fight or negotiation. It was a deeper, darker kind of danger, something that lurked beneath the surface of the world, something that only the truly unfortunate got to see. After a few more moments of tense silence, the man came to a stop in a small clearing, this one far more open than the others they had passed through. The trees here were sparse, allowing the sunlight to break through in patches, casting long shadows on the ground. There was something almost serene about it, despite the unease Dunk still felt. He could see that Egg's shoulders had relaxed a fraction, his gaze shifting around the clearing, trying to make sense of the surroundings. But Dunk remained wary. "We're close now," the stranger said, his voice low and purposeful. "But I have to warn you, once we reach the place, things may not go as you expect." "Just tell us what's going on," Dunk replied, his tone tight. "We've followed you long enough. If you've got some sort of trap set up, I won't walk into it." The stranger turned to face him then, and Dunk saw something flicker in his eyes. It was a coldness, a detachment that made Dunk's hand tighten around his sword hilt. He had seen that look before, on the faces of men who had done things they could never undo, things that haunted them forever. This man wasn't just a guide, he was someone with his own agenda, and Dunk wasn't sure if they were simply pawns in his game. "I'm not leading you into any trap," the man said, his voice flat. "But what you'll find ahead might make you wish it were a trap." The cryptic warning hung in the air like a shadow, and Dunk couldn't help but feel the hairs on the back of his neck rise. Whatever lay ahead, it wasn't going to be easy, and it wasn't going to be what they expected. Egg shifted his weight nervously, the weight of the unknown pressing on him. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice cracking slightly despite his attempt to sound confident. The stranger regarded him with an unreadable expression, his eyes scanning the boy's face. There was a moment of silence, and then he spoke again, his words deliberate. "Sometimes the land gives you what you need, not what you want. You'll have to make a choice when you get there, and once you make it, there's no going back." Dunk frowned, unsure of what the man was implying. "A choice? What kind of choice?" "Whether you walk away, or whether you take what's been given to you," the man said, his tone implacable. "What happens after that is not my concern." The cryptic nature of his words unsettled Dunk, but it was Egg who seemed to take it hardest. The boy looked at the man with a mix of confusion and fear, his youthful face pale, as if the weight of the decision was already bearing down on him. "We've come this far," Dunk said, trying to steady the boy. "We can't turn back now." But the truth was, Dunk didn't know what lay ahead. He didn't know if this journey would lead them to a place of safety or to a fate worse than death. All he knew was that they had made a decision to follow this man, and now they had to see it through. The stranger turned again, his back to them now, and began walking towards the edge of the clearing. "Keep up," he called over his shoulder. "It won't be much longer." Dunk glanced down at Egg, who met his gaze, his eyes filled with questions. Dunk didn't have the answers, not yet, but he would protect the boy, no matter what lay ahead. Together, they moved forward, the forest closing in around them once more. Whatever came next, Dunk knew one thing for certain: they had crossed a threshold, and there would be no turning back. The journey through the woods had taken its toll on Dunk, both physically and mentally. As they approached the mysterious location the stranger had led them to, Dunk could feel his pulse quicken. The sense of foreboding had only grown stronger, and even Egg, who had been so resilient through the ordeal, was now quiet, his face drawn and pale. Every step they took seemed to carry them further into the unknown, and Dunk couldn't help but wonder if they had made a mistake by trusting the stranger. But they had come too far to turn back now, and the path ahead was the only one left open to them. The clearing they entered was unlike anything Dunk had expected. It wasn't a grand monument or a temple hidden deep within the forest, as he had half anticipated. Instead, it was a small, humble sight, almost ordinary in appearance at first glance. The earth beneath their feet was soft, covered in a carpet of moss, while the trees around them towered high, their branches reaching up like silent sentinels. In the center of the clearing stood a simple stone altar, worn by the passage of time, its surface chipped and weathered, yet somehow still standing firm. It was the kind of place one might pass by without a second thought, but Dunk felt a chill settle over him as they approached it. The stranger stopped at the edge of the clearing, his figure casting a long shadow as the sun began to dip lower in the sky. Dunk and Egg paused as well, uncertain of what to do next. The air was heavy with tension, as if the very ground beneath them was holding its breath. "Here we are," the stranger said, his voice low and hollow. as though the place itself had drained the life from him. This is where the choice is made. Dunk's hand instinctively tightened around the hilt of his sword, though he had no intention of drawing it. He had long since learned that the sword was not always the answer. "What kind of choice?" he asked, his voice strained with the weight of everything that had led them here. The man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he turned slowly, his eyes flicking between Dunk and Egg, as though weighing something in his mind. "A choice that will determine your future," he said finally. "But it's not something I can explain. You'll know when the time comes." Dunk exchanged a glance with Egg, but the boy's eyes were filled with uncertainty. Dunk could feel the same question gnawing at his own insides. What was this place? What did it have to do with their journey? And what choice could possibly be so important that it would affect the rest of their lives? "What do we do now?" Dunk asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The stranger stepped closer to the altar, his footsteps soft on the moss-covered ground. He stood in front of it for a moment, as if lost in thought. Then, with a slight nod, he motioned for Dunk and Egg to follow. "Come closer," he said. "There's nothing to fear here." But Dunk's instincts told him otherwise. Something in the air had changed, and it was as if the clearing itself had grown darker, the shadows lengthening around them. The sounds of the forest had grown quieter too, as though all life had been stilled in anticipation. Egg, reluctant but curious, stepped forward, his feet dragging along the ground. Dunk followed closely behind, his hand still hovering near his sword, though he didn't know why. The stranger stood in front of the altar, his back to them now, his voice barely a whisper as he muttered something under his breath. The words were foreign, unintelligible, and yet they sent a shiver down Dunk's spine. Suddenly, the air seemed to thrum with a strange energy, a vibration that made the hairs on Dunk's neck stand on end. It was as though the world itself was reacting to the man's words, as if the ground beneath them was alive. Dunk glanced around, his eyes searching for any sign of danger, but there was nothing. The clearing remained unchanged, and yet everything felt different. The stranger turned to face them then, his expression unreadable. "The time has come," he said, his voice low and calm. "But it is not my place to tell you what to do. The choice is yours, and yours alone." Dunk felt a surge of frustration rise within him. He had followed this man through the woods, through uncertainty and danger, only to be left with an empty choice at the end of it all. What kind of game was this? He took a step forward, ready to demand more answers, but then Egg spoke, his voice barely audible. "I think I understand," Egg said softly, his eyes fixed on the altar. "It's about what we want, and what we're willing to sacrifice to get it." Dunk looked at his young companion, his heart aching for the boy. Egg had always been wise beyond his years, but this was a lesson Dunk hadn't wanted to teach him, not in a place like this. He opened his mouth to speak, but the words caught in his throat. What could he say to reassure the boy? That this was just a trial, that they could walk away and forget everything that had happened. But they couldn't, could they? They had made it this far, and there was no turning back. The choice had to be made, and whatever consequences came with it, they would have to face them together. The stranger stepped back from the altar, his gaze now focused on them, waiting. "It's time," he said again, as if the decision had already been made for them. "Go ahead." For a long moment, Dunk stood frozen, torn between the uncertainty of the situation and the undeniable pull to do something, anything. Finally, he turned to Egg, his eyes softening as he placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "This is your choice too," Dunk said, his voice firm. "But whatever happens, I'll be with you." Egg nodded, his face set with determination, and for the first time since they had entered the clearing, Dunk felt a sense of peace settle over him. They would face this together, whatever it was. The stranger had given them the power to decide, but it was their strength, their bond, that would guide them through. And so, with one final look at the altar, Dunk stepped forward, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The choice was theirs to make, and though the future was uncertain, Dunk knew one thing for sure: he would protect Egg, no matter what the cost. The Hedge Knight is more than just a tale of swords and sigils. It's a deeply human story wrapped in the grandeur of Westeros. Through the eyes of Ser Duncan the Tall, we experience a world caught between the fading honor of old chivalry and the simmering tensions of great houses poised on the brink of war. Dunk is no ordinary knight. He's a Hedge Knight, a man without noble lineage, armor barely held together, and a name known to no one. Yet in his quiet, steadfast way, he becomes the embodiment of knighthood's highest ideals. In a world where loyalty is currency and power often trumps morality, Dunk stands tall literally and figuratively, as a reminder of what a knight should be. The story's emotional weight is heightened by his relationship with Egg, the sharp-tongued boy who hides a royal bloodline behind his shaved head. Their bond grows from convenience into something far deeper, an echo of the great knight-squire pairings of legend, forged not in castles, but on the dusty roads of Westeros. Their connection also serves as a powerful contrast between class and character. Egg may be a prince in disguise, but it's Dunk's actions, not Egg's birth, that define nobility here. Their journey together, riddled with danger and discovery, sows the seeds for events that will one day shape the fate of the entire realm. George R.R. Martin uses the novella to strip down the elaborate politics of A Song of Ice and Fire and focus on something more intimate: personal honor, injustice, and the burdens of choice. We see how the old Targaryen dynasty still casts a long shadow over Westeros, and how seemingly minor skirmishes, like the Trial of Seven, reflect the brewing chaos that will one day explode into civil war. The tale is laced with foreshadowing, subtle nods to future tragedies like the Blackfire rebellions, and quiet commentary on how power and principle often collide. What makes the Hedge Knight so enduring is its sense of grounded heroism. Dunk is no chosen one, no wielder of ancient magic or hidden prophecy. He's just a man trying to do the right thing, even when it costs him everything. And that, perhaps, is the heart of the story. It reminds us that in a realm of dragons, direwolves, and dynasties, the quiet courage of a single Hedge Knight can still leave a mark. As the novella closes with Dunk and Egg riding off under the sun, neither truly aware of the storm that history will one day wrap them in, readers are left with a bittersweet sense of hope. Their journey is just beginning. And though we know the fate that eventually befalls them in the wider lore, the Hedge Knight lets us live, for a while, in the moments before the fall, where honor still matters and friendship still has a fighting chance.